Hi, I'm Stephanie, and welcome to Whispers of the Soul, where angelic guidance, energy healing, and everyday miracles come alive. Each story is a reminder you are held, you are guided, and everything you are seeking already lives within you. As you listen, notice what stirs, what softens, and what feels like a quiet yes within you. I tore my ACL playing soccer when I was 27 and had to have surgery, and took about 9 months before I was playing again, and was fine. No big deal. All good. And then 4 years later, I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus playing soccer. And everyone's response was like, you're not going to play soccer again. Why would you play soccer again? Like, you just had to have two surgeries because you're playing soccer. And so their intense opinions did mentally convince me not to ever play soccer again. And I am somewhat irritated by the influence of that, but it made me stop and question, okay, why did this happen to me twice? What have I not learned? What lesson from that first tear did I not learn? And it took 4 years before my angels were like, okay, if you're not going to learn it, let's do this again. Let's figure it out. And maybe one had nothing to do with the other. But what I can tell you is that within 9 months, I quit my job, hit the road to travel around the United States, and within the year had started a business in Houston, Texas. And so I do believe that sometimes the answers are not immediate, but there's always a lesson. And so for me at that time, I was playing a ton of soccer. I was on teams, like 2 to 3 teams on Friday nights, indoor soccer, occasionally subbed on Saturdays. I played an indoor and outdoor team on Sundays. And then occasionally I would play on Tuesday nights as well. And after every game, we would go out drinking. And I was up super late. I wasn't sleeping at all well. And it was very surface level relationships. There was no depth. And I had realized that between the 4 years of, I couldn't tell you anything about my friends on a deeper level than what they did for their job and maybe where they went to college. And so I was delving deeper into the depth with other groups of friends, but it was never with soccer people. And it was just pure surface level behavior. And looking back at that, I see that, I recognize that. But it was never, and I was never going to change. And so I knew that I needed to be forced, not necessarily to quit soccer, but soccer was such a big part of my identity at that time. It was the main social aspect of my life. I had softball on Wednesdays and would occasionally do a different recreational sport throughout the week with soccer people. And so it truly was like my life. And when I had that second surgery, I went through a bit of an identity crisis because not only were my friends who were part of almost every day of my life not there on the daily basis, but I also couldn't play the activity and sport that I had grown to love so much. And I just had to sit with that. And when you're recovering from knee surgery and you can't walk and you're on crutches for multiple weeks because you had the meniscus tear surgery, you have a lot of time to think because it is so painful. It's like the most ridiculous, exhausting thing of my life. And I was in shape back then and it was rough. But pondering and considering and thinking about why, not necessarily why did this happen to me, but like also why did this happen to me? What message was this knee surgery? And to me, it was life needs to be changed. We need to shake things up and figure it out. And so I had to have emergency knee surgery, first of all. If I had been given the chance, I probably would not have had the second knee surgery and I would have just strengthened my quads or figured out a way to live without it. But my meniscus had, I think it was called a bucket tear. It had flipped over and was creating a lock in my knee. And so I couldn't straighten my knee. There was a slight bend in it. And so I had to have surgery within less than 2 weeks is what the surgeon had told me when I went in to see him. And I was so sad and upset that it was a low point of time for Stephanie. And so during this time, I am processing and I am considering and I am wondering like, why? And I end up, and they do tell you when life changes happen, like don't make decisions within the first year. But I also, if you know yourself or you know how you have been feeling, a year is not going to change those feelings, right? And so for me personally, the frustration of my current job, it wasn't like a toxic environment, but it definitely was not a healthy environment. And when you are so excited to work a night shift so that you don't have to just be in that energy in the office, I mean, that tells you something, right? And I never minded the work. I loved the work. The work was essentially what I do now is productivity and organization of a scheduling for group exercise, personal training, et cetera, and different programs that we hosted at our rec center. It was amazing. I loved it so much. I could probably have done that the rest of my life and been totally content, but life had other plans. And so when I tore the ACL, meniscus, and MCL, it stopped me and made me ponder, okay, what's next? And so you evaluate each area of your life. And for me, work was a big one and personal as well. So social life was also taking a hit at that time. And even my health, if you want to look at it that way, like I may have been able to go off and run a half marathon if I wanted to, but I was also drinking a lot and not eating the best foods. And so it caused me to turn in my notice at work 8 months after I had surgery. It caused me to sell 60% of my possessions, put maybe 15% in storage, and then I took another 10% with me. And I gave up my apartment and I hit the road. And it was amazing.
Have you ever felt a moment